Welcome back to the Dr. Supercoach podcast. You're on once again with Cheezo. Now, I've made this promise about 5 times that I'd show you a little bit of behind the scenes of how we get, these lovely recordings into your ear holes. So we're going to jump into the PC in just a second and get cracking on this podcast. Supercoach for Dummies. We've made this one specifically for you, Pistol. So I hope you enjoyed. I hope you see this video too. By the way, I haven't seen. I don't think you've seen the previous behind the scenes vlog. So we'll see how we go. Absolutely awesome podcast I've been on with JB, and it's nice to go back to the beginning and the things that we take for granted and just assume that people know what to do. It's just nice to go back and cover all that stuff. So let's get cracking and turn this into something good. So obviously I sped this up because this is quite a long process. This is at 5 times speed, so you're looking at like a 45 minute to an hour edit that goes into most podcasts. First thing I'm doing is uploading each individual audio file. We do that for the reason that our vocals won't be identical. The same processes on each individual vocal won't really line up. That my voice is slightly different to JB's. I talk slightly differently, and so putting the same effects on them isn't going to sound the same. Editing, just a little mistake in the intro so it looks seamless, and then obviously just aligning the two vocals so they sound like they're in part of a conversation is part of the important part. And I'm also changing volumes, panning, things like that to make sure that it sounds like that we're in a room having a conversation together, and that's the most important aspect to it. Now, another thing that we're doing this year is we're having segments, as we're trying to further identify the segments in the podcast with a little sound effect that I've put together with a swoosh in and out and a kick of a football. It's actually a Trent McKenzie kick from 70 metres or something on the old Gold Coast channel, and then just aligning these two audio tracks so they come in at the right point. And now this is typically what I do when I'm looking for something to enter in the podcast, a little meme or a little sound effect. I'll pull up YouTube and find a sound effect that I'm looking for, and then import the audio from that, so that I can edit that sound effect, just to kind of give that little bit of production value to the section that we're looking for. So I usually download a couple and then try and see what works. Right, so now that we've found the audio clip that we want to use, it's just all about mixing it into the podcast so that it sounds authentic. And again, I'm trying a couple different versions there to see which one works. I'm changing the volume and trying to take out any peaks and that I don't think are working very well. And it's all a bit of a game, just mixing backward and forwards to try and get that right flow that we're looking for. And it does take a fair bit of know-how and a bit of experimentation and experience with doing it to kind of know what works and what plugins to work on top of it. This by no means is a exhaustive step-by-step process so you can edit the same way that I do. It's just more of a behind-the-scenes look of just how much goes into each podcast, and the ways that I try and bring extra production value for it. So putting in another segment gap, and I've just noticed that JB was muting his microphone or turning his microphone upwards, like louder and softer depending on noise that he had in the background, which quite often means that the sound in from one part of the segment, one part of the podcast to the other, are at different volumes. So I more often than not have to go into the actual audio and change the audio as the podcast goes along, because I can visually see from the waveform that he's getting quieter or softer and things like that. And this processing time on my PC is probably the most frustrating thing. I'm still working on a 2013 PC from back in the day, and as you can see, this is at 5 times speed, and this is literally what I'm waiting on for it to be processed from what I've just edited on it, so that I can move on to the next start of the process. While it's processing like this, I can't do anything. So I'm sitting here chilling on Slack, probably just throwing some bants in the general chat, who knows, because I'm just waiting on the PC. And new PC is definitely on the cards to further increase our production value and our speed of getting content out, but something to think about in the future. So again, just here, what I'm looking at is editing in another, another little separate segment, and just trying to find the best kind of fade in, fade out section that I can from one point to the other. I'm actually comparing the the segment split wave just here, so they're all normal. There's nothing worse than having the same audio file mixed different ways in between each segment. You want it to be the exact same every single time. So again, here when I'm looking to edit this next segment in here, I'm looking to actually use the same one that I've used on every other time, so that it becomes almost like a subconscious thing that that this is becoming the end of the podcast. So as you can see, this is the edit of the podcast. I've kind of mixed everything together. The intro and outro are the same every single time. And another thing you've just flashed up there in front of us is one of the plugins that we use. While each podcast is slightly different, we've kind of got it down pat that it's the exact same. Our voice doesn't really change, our recording gear doesn't change between podcasts, so you can kind of get a default kind of preset plugins that you use. So I'll use probably 4 different presets we're using, from a de-esser to a compressor. I'll do some parametric equalization that just it takes out the bass sound so that we're not competing with each other, just so there's some separation in our voice. And a lot of times they can be mixed together now that we're using the same microphone and the same equipment. But previously to this year, the previous 3 years, I've had to use different equalization techniques on each audio file because we had people using different microphones. The fact that we've got the exact same microphone now means that I can almost use a blanket recording, or a preset equalization across them all, because I'm working with the same kind of dynamic range on there. So that one works really, really well. What you've seen is, while that's exporting, I'm still trying to do a number of other jobs. I might be doing an intro to a YouTube video. I might be writing up the SoundCloud description. I might be, chatting to JB to, help me with the description, because you get podcast brain is the only way I can describe it. You've just come off an hour-long podcast. You spend an hour editing, and then you get to the end of those 2 hours, and your concentration's a little bit gone, and you're kind of like, what did I just talk about? And so you kind of need to lean on someone else to try and get get the points across, because you've kind of forgot what you're talking about. So as you can see here, I'm just trialing a few intros depending on what I'm trying to do. This is directly in reference to one of the vlogs I was trying to record. So while I'm exporting the previous podcast, I'm recording the introduction to this behind the scenes section here that you saw with the video and the intro before the time lapse. And that's where it comes from. So now that we've exported the file, I'm going to find the exact file that we've got and upload it, and in goes our tags and our description, and you can even schedule it, which is what I'm doing here, to make sure that it posts to all the podcast platforms at the appropriate time. And then I'm going to jump over to Patreon and give the behind the scenes section of the podcast, so you guys get access to it before it goes live on the podcasting forum. So that's the process there. It's just, once you've done all the editing, etc., you've done the description, you've uploaded it everywhere, we can then schedule it so that it comes out at the exact time that we want it to. And if you really appreciate this early access stuff, let me know, because I'll keep doing it for you, so that those behind the Patreon wall get access to these public podcasts earlier. And I think that's really valuable for you guys, being able to get to it a day earlier, and I really enjoy getting that out for you. So that's posted, that's live, and the last step is just jumping over to Facebook and copying the link, scheduling that over on Facebook as well, so that's going to post as soon as it goes live as well. So that's the final step as well, being able to line it up so everything kind of posts at the same time. So there you have it, guys. the podcast edited from start to finish. I know I haven't gone like on a micro level where you can see every single movement that I'm doing, but there's quite a lot that goes into it. I generally just don't know what I'm planning to do going into it. Sometimes if I kind of have a thought during the podcast, we make a mistake or something like that I think I can turn into something funny. I might have the cogs turning as we're going, but usually as I'm editing, listening to the podcast, I might have a brainwave and think that this might be something funny to go with. So that's pretty much where that starts from. But yeah, if you enjoyed that, just let me know. Now, I do just want to take a moment to talk about the Rivalry League. I know everyone is really keen to know where this draft is coming. Just so you know, we're really investing a lot of time and energy to get our streaming set up ready to go. So we've got a few little interesting things ready to come into the fold so that everything's ready and it's just going to be high production value and something that really aligns with what we think we bring to the community. We see, people are asking, where's the content in the preseason, but we honestly don't think that producing content for the sake of producing content is really what we're about. We want to produce high quality, stuff that really aligns with our values, and we think that the idea of a live show during the year for the Thursday podcast is something that we're really, really excited about. And so we're hoping that the first live show that we do will be the live draft for the Rivalry League. So I'm really, really keen for that and to see how that turns out, because especially with a timer during a draft, something like that, people are going to panic. I'm going to somehow end up with Doc, even though he should have gone like 5 rounds later. I'm going to start the ruck run. I'm going to start the Slack favourites run, as it'll be. No Supercoach talent whatsoever, but Doc, you're coming home. I'm saying that now. So with that said, you guys, thanks very much for watching, and thanks for hitting the thumbs up button if you did enjoy the video. If you want to see more content from us in the pre-season, you can consider subscribing and turning on the notification bell so you don't miss a video. So keep an eye out for more content coming in the 2020 pre-season. We'll catch you again soon.